Are you nervous?
A little bit, but I think I don't know what I am. Oh my gosh. I am I am surrendering to the universe's intentions for me and for this podcast.
Well, intentions. I mean, you came on this podcast to share your story of overcoming and healing and your journey and everything that surrounds that. And that's not an easy step. It's something that is very difficult for a lot of people. It can be extremely emotional and uh, I don't know. It's very difficult for a lot of people to do, to put their story into words and to get their story across the way that they want to get it across.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess going back, what is your healing journey like? What has it been like? As far as like emotions and not necessarily the process, but how has it impacted you? We'll start there.
My healing journey has impacted me by helping me recognize that the past does not any longer need to hurt me, or I can learn from it and grow from it. So I don't know. That's a really big question. That like includes everything. My whole healing journey is a lot of things.
It's a lot of things, but I guess what I was trying to ask is how, by going through this healing journey, by going through all the whole process, what does your life look like now?
Oh, that's a little bit easier. I would say now my life looks empowered, and I feel that I've really learned to let go of control. As I was telling you earlier, being a victim of abuse from my childhood, I feel like I became kind of a control freak early on and tried to micromanage every little thing in my life that I could control. And I did that as a young adult, and it is a stressful way of being. And I've learned to surrender, and I've learned to soften, and I've learned to find more ease in my life, and to treat myself with loving kindness and respect, and all the things that I want, how I want to be treated. I've learned that it all comes from within, and that it's not just about, oh, well, this person's not treating me right and I'm a victim. No, it's all about, well, how do I treat myself? How do I view myself? And therefore other people follow suit because they can sense that. They sense.
Yeah, it's like a sense of like confidence. When people can see that you are a strong person, they then treat you the same way.
Yeah. So I feel I've come a really long way. I've also let go of a lot of the self-criticism that I used to have. I find now that, I speak to myself in my head with gentle kindness and love and compassion. And sometimes I do criticize myself and say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. And then I go back and I say, it's okay. You're human. I'm human. It's okay.
Yeah.
I accept that I'm human and I will never be perfect. And so to have that grace and that, that acceptance, that self-acceptance has really helped me to find more peace in my mind and in my life.
That's important for a lot of people, because so many people are going through life like with all this trauma that they've acquired through their whole lifetime, and they allow it to affect their entire life, whether, their relationships, their business relationships, their work life, they're emotionally affected by it, and just an event. It's a cycle that just keeps perpetuating itself.
It's true. And if you don't recognize that it starts within, that we are manifesting our own reality from what's going on in our head, in our body. When we don't recognize that, we can feel like the victim, and the victimhood will keep repeating itself. And it's the triggers, the things that trigger our trauma, we'll keep getting more and more because I believe it's the universe trying to show us, hey, you still haven't worked through this trauma. Look at it. You got to look at it. You got to feel those feelings. You got to let them process. And, it helps to have a therapist and it helps to have someone to walk you through it. I do think that it's going to keep getting triggered until you are able to really confront it. And that's scary, just like confronting any fear. It's scary, but it's essential to break free of it, I believe.
What is the one thing that you've done in your healing journey, your recovering journey, that has been the most significant? Like, was it like, because for me, like overcoming my past trauma, for me, the one thing that helped me the most was probably working out. And I didn't even know it at the time. I'm just like, man, working out sucks. But then it was something that I had to where I could put like my frustrations, my anger towards something. And it almost like started my healing journey in a sense.
Yeah, I think yoga started my healing journey. When I was 28, I started taking yoga classes, and I felt like something was kind of missing in my life. I had 3 young kids at the time. My daughter was a baby. And I definitely felt kind of empty inside. There was something really missing, but I didn't know what. But I took a yoga class, and it was very therapeutic. It brought me peace. And I love the physical aspect of it too, that it releases endorphins or whatever. It makes you feel good. But that quieting of the mind and that breathing deeply and slowly helped me to soften. That was the first time I think I really found a way to soften and find ease and find peace in my mind. And it was beautiful. And I cried, and I was just like, wow, I need more of this. And within a year, I signed up for teacher training, even though I had no intention of being a teacher. I just wanted to learn more about this wonderful art, which I did. And that was a really cool process, going through the training with other students, on their own journeys, and sharing with each other and growing together, and meditating and I had done some meditating. I meditated with my last 2 children when they were born, when I was in childbirth and labor and delivery. I did like self hypnosis, which is basically like meditation. I had like a recording that I had recorded for myself to listen to, and then just music, and it just helped me to get into a deeper state of mind so that I wasn't experiencing that full pain.
Did it work?
Yeah, it really did, especially with Taylor. He was the first one because I practiced meditating every day up until the delivery. And so I was good at, getting into a deeper state of mind very quickly. And it was really helpful. It's not that I didn't feel any pain, but I felt detached from it. And I didn't feel like I needed drugs. I didn't use any painkillers.
Wow.
And I just breathed deep through it until it was time to push. And then I was feeling pain, but not as much as I did with my first child, when, because it kind of escalates,
Right.
throughout the labor. It's just like it gets more and more intense. And then you're just like, okay, give me the fucking drugs. Sorry, I said a bad word.
No, you can swear.
Oh, okay.
I swear all the time.
Oh, okay.
That goes to speak for the authenticity, right? Like when you're able to say things like that, because it's like just 2 individuals having a conversation.
True.
So like if you were to censor yourself, it just seems weird.
Okay. Good deal. So yoga and meditation were 2 really big ways for me to learn to start to reprogram. The trauma had programmed, all these voices in my head, self-criticism, feeling less than I am, I don't want to say worthless, but worth less than I really am worth. And feeling angry or sad, and, just all these feelings that would come up in my life, which I didn't recognize as being from my past, from my trauma. It was at that time, I didn't know what it was from. I just knew I wasn't really that happy. And, but yoga and meditation were 2 of the really big avenues. And then I started, I have had therapists. I think that was another thing that was pretty helpful for me. It's hard to just say one, but I guess if I had to say one, it would be yoga. But I also journal pretty regularly, and that's really helpful for me too. I think I used to find myself, like back in high school, this is a long time ago, but I used to find myself complaining a lot to my friends. And, like, here's my drama, and
Do you think you were like seeking help or like
maybe sympathy?
sympathy?
Because I don't think I got a whole lot of that growing up. It was a very hands-off kind of child raising, the way that we were raised, which most people back in the 80s, that's kind of how it was, But for me, I knew that like I wanted more attention and nurturing. And so it may have been me seeking to get some attention from my friends in that way and some nurturing, even though, of course, it wasn't the result. They were just getting annoyed that I was complaining all the time. And at one point, someone said that. They're like, you complain a lot. And I was like, oh. So I stopped. And I think that might be when I took on journaling, because it was like, okay, well, I have all these things to complain about. I'm just going to tell myself.
Do you still have those journals?
I don't. I burn them after a while. I would have like 100 at least by now. But it's kind of therapeutic to just kind of like read them again and see what the past was, and then burn it and be like, past is no more. It doesn't have any hold on me.
Well, it's interesting to look back and see what your thoughts were at that specific moment, because like even in that moment, it might have seemed like the biggest thing to you, but then like, as time goes on, you're like, wow, I was being ridiculous, or maybe that wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was, or whatever it is. It's good to be able to look back and reflect on those things and then be like, okay, I've moved on.
True.
Life is better now.
Yep.
It gives you like a greater appreciation, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I definitely do like to reread them before I burn them, but I can't keep them all. It's too much. I'm all about releasing the past but learning from it, you know? And I think that I've succeeded with that for the most part so far.
Yeah, that's again, that's one of the hardest things to do, is let go of the past. And that's something that I think even like to this day, a lot of people, like including myself, struggle with that. Like there's things even now, like I'll look back and it's hard to want to let go of it, but you have to. It's important. It's important for self-development to be better. And I think I mentioned this on the last time we talked, is that's something I've noticed in you, is like within the last year, I've noticed a huge improvement. Like whenever I've ran into you or whatever at different events, you seem just relieved and just like happy and more bubbly, and just, I would assume that's your natural self.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I have definitely lightened my load. In my subconscious mind, like I didn't even know that it was there. It's so interesting how we don't really recognize the baggage we're carrying until we see it, and it's taken me, I think the relationships in my life have been a big tool to see that. I think relationships are like a mirror for us in our lives to see things about ourselves. And
in what aspects?
In a lot of different aspects, but like, for example, the guys that I've dated in the last few years have been a lot of, I've noticed addiction. I've noticed some anger management issues. I've noticed insecurity. And not talking to me with the best respect or nurturing way of speaking. And so when I think about these things, and I think it's progressed, which is good, because I think that kind of shows my progression. But when I think about these things, I think, okay, well, that shows me that I've got some addiction issues. I've got some insecurities. I've got some anger management issues. And I used to know I had those issues a long time ago, but because I've been working on them, I thought they were gone. But it's like, okay, well, I dated another guy that shows me
a different aspect.
Yeah, there's still something there. Why am I attracted to that person? Why is this, this connection happening?
Where do you think that comes from?
I think it comes from my childhood. I was abused. I was, a lot of people would just call it discipline, and I'm sure that's what my parents thought of it as, and I don't hold it against them. I recognize where they came from and how that was normal for them and for the times.
Right. It was a different time.
Yeah.
Completely different time.
Yeah. But it was harsh treatment, and I was whipped often with a belt or had my pants pulled down to spank me. And, there's always the chase, which, my dad pounding on the door saying he's going to bust it down. And I knew he probably would if I didn't let him in, so the fear building up to the point where you get hit. And then also just not being spoken with the most loving kindness,
Yeah.
in those moments and also other moments, just, I think my dad was tormented. And so.
What do you think the percentage is of the parents that raise kids in the 80s of them being abused and having an extremely traumatic past? Because that's something I don't think was ever really talked about.
Yeah.
But they were raised by the baby boomers, the people who were involved in World War II. It was a hard time.
Yeah, exactly. And my grandpa was a sergeant in the war, and so I know my dad was treated very harshly, and that my grandpa had an actual whip and would whip the boys. He didn't whip the girls. He'd only whip the boys. And
that's respectable.
It came out, when I would be, being disciplined, that my dad didn't want me turning out like my aunts who seemed to be, spoiled when he was growing up because.
And you were the only girl?
I was the only girl in my family. And it did seem that I got hit more than my brothers from talking to them and from my memories of it. I was kind of a target. I think it may be also because I was kind of feisty and I would talk back,
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see that.
Yeah. I do not, I didn't take the abuse laying down, and I felt like I wanted to be heard, and I would try to speak up for myself, and that would just be thought of as back talk, and you get in more trouble, and whereas my brothers were a little more like, okay, let's just make the peace so that we don't get hurt, or whatever, I think they had different coping mechanisms. For me, it was like, this isn't right. I need to stand up for myself, and,
Right.
and so, it never really helped me out in that situation.
So going through all this abuse and trauma as a child, did you ever confide in any of your friends at that time?
No,
is this something that
I really didn't. I don't remember talking to my friends about it at all.
This wasn't something that was really talked about, though, right?
Yeah,
like outside of the home.
I don't know. I mean, I don't remember talking about it at all to my friends. And I would say probably at least about a third of the kids from that age, the era, were probably traumatized by their discipline, being abused. And some of them, it may not have just been that, like I know of people who were hit with, like a power extension cord and different things that, just whatever they could grab to just hit the kid, So some people, I think, get it worse than me, of course. But I think that, I didn't feel comfortable talking to anybody about it. I don't remember telling any of my friends, like, hey, my dad hits me. Like, I don't remember ever talking about it. But I do remember my friends being terrified of my dad.
Mm.
So, like, a lot of people didn't want to come over once they knew that he was this angry person, because he didn't have a filter and he didn't put on the airs for company like some people do, at least not for my friends, maybe for his friends. But when my friends were over, he would act the same way he'd act when they weren't over. So if he was going to yell at me, he'd yell at me. And he usually did, And so they were scared of him. Like they didn't know what he was going to do next. And he would just fly off the handle at any given moment. So that unpredictability is scary. It was scary to grow up that way. I remember certain incidences, like one time my dog peed on the floor, which she had a habit of doing because he helped train her. with a rope, yanking her around, and scared the crap out of her. So she had this nervous peeing habit, and so she would pee. And one time she peed too many times, and he grabbed his pistol out of the drawer and he was going to kill her.
Oh my gosh.
And I got in front of her and I was like, "You are not killing my dog. You have to kill me first." And it was so scary, but it was like, I can't let him kill my dog. And I know he would have, like that's just how he was.
How old were you when that happened?
Maybe 13.
What kind of effect do you think that had on you? That moment?
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of moments that add up. It's hard to say one moment, because there were a lot that were similar to that, where I feared for my life or someone else's life, or just their safety. I feared. I worried about my mom. I worried about my brothers. I worried about myself. Like what he was gonna do. But yeah, It's and I think, just being in that uncertainty growing up that's part of why I was a control freak, because it's like, well, I can't control this. I can't control my dad. I don't know what's going to happen next there. So I need to take like ultimate control of the rest of my life, because this I can control. And then that makes me feel safe if I can have total control, which is never really possible. I mean, we never really have control over anything. But when we try to micromanage things and have
it's just a hindrance.
Control, oh my gosh, it's so stressful.
You're in your own way.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, It's true. It's true. And so even now I'm still learning to be in the flow of my life, to just go with the flow.
Yeah.
It's like that concept is still sinking in.
Yeah, there's a good balance to be had when you allow things to just happen, the things that you cannot control, but you have control of the things that you can control.
Yeah.
There's a good balance.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And to take the control to, for me, one thing that I do nowadays and I did back then actually, that really helps me to find peace and grounding is going out in nature for hikes. And so that's something when I find myself feeling stressed and, I've had this really busy week, I've been working a lot, I will say, okay, how can I get out into nature and go for a hike, and I'll find the time and schedule it in and just do it, and that taking that control, it works so well for me because
you're making time for yourself.
Yeah. And that time is so therapeutic. Whenever I'm out in nature, I feel connected to all that is. I feel grounded. Do you
leave your phone in the car?
No, I have my phone, but I mostly just use it for pictures.
Oh, okay.
Because I get inspired and I'm like, I gotta take a picture of this mushroom or whatever. Nature is so magical, and so it's hard to not take pictures. Sometimes I actually especially if I'm going out and kind of grieving and just working through some hard emotions, I will just tell myself, no pictures today. It's just about me and observing, I still observe all the beauty and let it move me, but it's not about sharing with others. It's just about me going inward. And so... Yeah,
because then at a certain point, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for other people, right?
Yeah.
There's sometimes where I'll take a picture of work, like a workout or like a kettlebell or something. And I'm like, I'll post this. It'll be inspirational or motivational or whatever it is. But then there's other days where I'm like, no, I just need to work out. I don't need to show that to other people. I just need to do it because it's going to help me.
Yep, exactly.
And I do that quite often, but I also share a lot of pictures too.
Yeah. Well, and it's okay to share too, because, you know, just like with this podcast, I think it's important to share our journey because other people can learn from it. But to do that all the time can just be give, but not to yourself, you know?
Well, it's almost like you're looking for self gratification, you know? If that's what I don't know. I guess if that's what your focus is.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to be your focus if you're trying to heal.
Yeah. It's all about your own healing and your feeling of self-acceptance and self-worth.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we do look outward, and especially with social media, because it can become an easy addiction to say, post something and see how many likes did I get, and let that determine your self-acceptance. Well, they accepted me, so okay, I feel okay about me now. Well, that obviously is not healthy. We should be able to accept ourselves. Even if we get 0 likes, we should still love ourselves and accept ourselves just the way we are and recognize that comes first and foremost.
That's why detaching and going out into the wild is important.
It is.
Because then you realize that none of that stuff matters, and
Exactly.
that life is so much bigger than social media and your phone.
It is. It is. And what goes in the thoughts in our mind too.
Yeah.
You know, like we often identify with the thoughts in our mind strongly as if that is us, but it really isn't the true us. And our real self is the observer behind the thoughts. And that's why I think meditation can be so powerful.
I like that. I like that line.
It is. We observe, and we're just there to experience life and in all of its aspects, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's another thing about acceptance that I think is really important. And I don't think it's as widely understood as it should be. People,
especially in today's day and age.
Yeah, people are all about, well, let's focus on the positive. Let's focus on what makes us feel good. And you look at social media and it's like everybody's best pictures and best moments. And I think that's great to see that stuff. It's encouraging and uplifting. But if that's all we're seeing, then it paints this picture of a false reality. Because the fact is, there is beauty in the chaos and the trauma and the hard times.
Yeah.
There is beauty in the breakdown. If we don't break down, we can't build up even stronger the next time around. You know, like we need those challenges in life to overcome and to be our best self, I think. And so I don't think we should gloss over the hard times completely and ignore them and pretend that we don't suffer, because I think that makes it difficult for people who are on social media a lot, which I choose to not be on social media a lot. But I know some people who are, and it affects them a lot. And I think that can make them suffer more because they feel they're alone in their suffering. If they go on and see all the best pictures of everybody's life, they're like, well, everybody else is living the perfect life, but here I am in a shit show, you know?
I guess I tend to look at social media objectively, because I don't think that when I see people's pictures, I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I scroll. I don't really, and I think that they're a normal person. Their house is probably a mess too.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's a healthy way to look at it. But I know some people who struggle with that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good to get the crap out there too sometimes, and we can't focus heavily on it or it's going to bring people down. That's the thing. You got to find the balance, but.
Well, it's all part of the process. Like, it's part of rising above, you know, like, I like to say that, like, rising, like your life may look like this, but it's a process every single day. Yeah. You still got to wake up every single day and have those same thoughts that, you know, you don't want to go to work, or you don't want to get your exercise in. Like, there's things you don't want to do, but when you do that, that's the glamorous picture, right? When you finish your workout, you're like, wow, I did it. I just took a picture. I'm covered in sweat.
Yeah.
Like, that's the prize moment. But what people don't see is the moments leading up to that, the struggle, the me sitting around, not wanting to go work out, me not wanting to put my shoes on to go to work. Like, those are the moments that are hard that people don't see.
Yeah. And I like it sometimes when people post those types of things too. Like,
yeah, I do too.
They share their struggle a little bit, but then also the nice turnout at the end, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think I like to get the full picture myself.
Yeah.
You can see.
That's why struggle every day is important. Because then it makes you have a greater appreciation. I said that earlier too, but for all the bullshit throughout the day. Like, all the bullshit throughout the day does not matter, really. You just have a greater appreciation for the day. Yeah. Because you've already won the day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good way of looking at it.
That's why, like, yoga is very important, because it's not easy. Yoga is not easy at all. It's very difficult.
Well, I don't know if I would say that. I've learned, you know, when I first started yoga, for the first few years, actually, I was over-efforting every pose, and it was very difficult. It was very difficult.
It can be as difficult as you want it to be.
It can, for sure, especially if you're just practicing by yourself.
Yeah.
But then, I like to challenge myself when I actually work myself a little harder when I'm practicing by myself. But then if I want to take a rest for 10 minutes and just meditate, I do that too, you know, so you can find that balance of whatever your body needs at the moment.
Yeah.
But I've also found that in yoga, it helps to have a balance between effort and surrender. And like I said in the beginning, I was always just over efforting, and I didn't understand that surrender piece. And I don't know, I'd taken a class or training actually that taught about the balance between effort and surrender. And I think it's a great analogy for life too, because we always need to find that balance between effort and surrender. And for me, it's been more on the side of effort and pushing and stressing and
control mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. And just and also it's, I think that self-criticism thing too. Well, you're not pushing hard enough, so I'd push harder. But learning the surrender piece has been so huge for me, to find a softening and to find a way to really be more enjoying of my practice and my life.
So what does that look like when you're in the middle of a yoga session and you think that you need to surrender a little bit more?
So like you're holding a pose, let's say Warrior 2, for example, and you got your arms out, your legs are wide, one knee's bent, and you're holding it and you're thinking, wow, this is a lot to hold on to and it's tight. But then, you think of the idea of surrendering and it's like, okay, where can I surrender? Okay, I can soften my face. Oh, I can relax my neck. I don't have to work so hard with my neck. Oh, my arms can actually soften a little bit. They don't sink as long as I don't soften them too much, like find that balance. And then even the legs, just the whole body, soften the skin, relax your mind. Breathe that deep, slow breath, and then you can still hold the pose if you keep enough effort, but finding that surrender makes it just more enjoyable. And it's like, oh, there's some ease here. It's not as hard as I thought it had to be. And it's just a beautiful balance. Like,
that reminds me of, have you ever heard of like the military method to falling asleep? You can fall asleep, I believe, within a minute or two.
No.
I'd have to look it up. Pretty much what it is you're relaxing all your muscles in your face. So first you think like, okay, like when you're falling asleep, you're kind of tense, and you think, okay, just let go. Yep. And then you let go.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, now let your shoulders just kind of sulk, and they sulk.
Yep.
And then you focus on your breathing.
This is meditation. What you're talking about is like how people get into meditation. And I do that myself to fall asleep. So if I know I want to get to sleep right away, I simply do what you were just saying. I start relaxing everything, and then the mind, and then the next thing you know, I'm asleep.
You just focus on your breathing. And then that calms the mind, because you're not thinking. You're just thinking about your breathing. And even if your like thoughts wander, you come back to your breathing.
Yep.
And
it makes it really easy to fall asleep.
Super easy.
Yep.
My wife's like, how do you fall asleep so quick? And I'm like, that's why.
I used to struggle back in high school and college days. It would take me sometimes 2 hours or more to fall asleep. And once I learned that technique, like, I don't have any issues with it anymore.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share with you when I was, I've been through a lot of different things in my life, and it's just too much to talk about it all, but I separated from my ex-husband about 7 years ago. And since then, I've been on a big self-growth journey. I mean, I feel like I have been my whole life to some extent, but it was easier to grow when I was by myself and focusing on me. But I told you about the guys that I've dated. The last guy that I dated ended up being a sex addict. And what I mean by that is he had to have sex with lots of different people, like outside of the relationship. And that I figured out, and that was obviously not okay, but it was eye-opening for me because I recognized this pattern. He seemed to be kind of a narcissistic and insensitive, like how they say narcissists are insensitive. He was like that. But the sex addict part, he showed me that there was something that I wasn't seeing. And there were other things in my life that showed me that as well. And that was certain girls that I had known who had been sexually abused by their fathers. And it was to the point where, after this breakup with this guy, this is a few months back, I was just like, okay, what is going on in my life? Like, I have all this interesting stuff going on with girls throughout my life or throughout my adult life that had been abused by their fathers. And why was that? I kept on feeling really strongly about it and really angry about it. And so you were angry that they were abused? Yes. And it actually made me question that I might have been possibly sexually abused as a child. Even though I had no recollection of that, it made me wonder, because I'm like, why does this keep presenting itself to me? To the point where the girl downstairs, she must have been about 12 years old. She was getting raped by her dad, and I called the cops. Like, there were enough situations where it was just like, why does this keep popping up in my life? And so anyway, the interesting thing that happened was I went on this awesome spiritual getaway to Sedona with one of my best friends, and we had a wonderful vacation, very spiritual, very nurturing, and I just felt so great. Loved it. Came back the next morning, I felt really depressed, and I was like, what is going on? And so I was journaling about what's going on in my life. I felt like I wanted to work more for my business, less for my job, but I didn't know how I could do that. I felt like I kept on ending up with the wrong men that weren't treating me well, and I didn't understand why. And I'm journaling about it, and I get a message from a friend from high school who says her husband's doing this energy work, and he would like to work with me if I'm interested for free. And I was like, wow. So he was transitioning from doing it part-time to doing it full-time. And I think, he wanted to get a little more practice and a little referrals, whatever. So I was like, sure. And he called me on the phone, and we talked, and it was a very powerful conversation. And I cried almost the entire conversation for like 20 minutes, which is crazy. This has never happened to me before, but it wasn't a sad cry at that point. It was tears of gratitude and joy. And I knew he was going to help me. And so after the guy I was dating that was the sex addict, I had signals that something wasn't right throughout that entire relationship. I kept getting feelings like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Something's not right. But I ignored them. And so my mind reasoned it away.
Okay.
Or he reasoned it away, because I'd ask him about it and he'd be like, oh no, so I believed what I wanted to believe. And after that relationship, I promised myself I would start listening to my intuition more and really give it value, because I recognized it was talking and I didn't give it any value, And so I've learned it's important for me to listen to my intuition. Well, when I was crying through that conversation, I knew that was my intuition saying, he is going to help you. And it was a wonderful conversation. And we worked, he asked me what I wanted to work on, and I instantly said childhood trauma. So I knew that something from my childhood was part of my problem, like why I was still suffering today. And so we did that. We did a couple sessions on childhood trauma, and
What did that look like?
So he has a gift. He can speak with spirits. He actually died and came back.
How did he die?
He had a growth. And so for 2 weeks, he was kind of like dying, and he was seeing ghosts. So he was seeing two people, like his dead parent and his wife's dead parent, and having conversations with them. And he did not understand what was happening. And then he seized up and died. And when he came back, he was like a higher version of himself. He had entered the spirit world. And when he came back, he was still able to communicate with the spirit world and to help people. And he knew it was a gift for a reason, that he was supposed to help people. And so that is exactly what he was doing for me. And so the spirits guided him to guide me through my past trauma. And he walked me through it. He saw like age 3.
Was he asking you questions? Like what was this
not
process
a whole
like?
lot. We both got into a deep meditative state.
By breathing?
Breathing deeply and visualizing. Smoky quartz was surrounding us. We're like in a cave of smoky quartz. It's very protective. Grounding by imagining roots going down from me and going all the way down to the earth's core and wrapping around it 3 times counterclockwise.
So during this, are you like laying down?
Yeah, I laid down. He said I could sit or lay, but I chose to lay. We were on a Zoom call. So, I laid down and I got into my state of mind, my, meditative state. So my eyes were closed most of the time. And then, he said, if I see the year lit up, it means that you don't have any trauma. And he said, if it's not, then we gotta work through it. And so he was going to help me heal the trauma. And so it started with age 3. I had started to be put into my bedroom as a punishment for being 3. Wow. Basically my parents, and it was really therapeutic too, because he was telling me what my parents were doing, and he was telling me what I was doing, and he was telling me what they were feeling, and he was telling me what I was feeling.
Now going back, do you remember those things?
I remember some of those
when he was telling you?
Well, yeah, a lot of it I did remember. Like he said you were in your room, you're alone, you're sad, you just want someone to play with you, you're crying. I remember being alone and sad in my room crying a lot as a child. And I didn't know why. I don't remember that part, but I do remember feeling very sad and isolated. And then they were in the other room and they were drinking and they were stressed out from their day and they just didn't have the patience to deal with me. So their way of dealing with it was just to put me in my room. So then at age 5, I started getting hit by my dad. And of course they thought of it as discipline, but you know, it's not. I mean, it's more than that, obviously, for me, you know, and it's very hurtful. And so, but one of the cool things was that he told me I had 2 guardian angels, a male and female, and that they were basically like my spirit parents and they were nurturing towards me. And so that was a huge part of my healing because I knew they were there and they were seeing my worth. And
Your parents?
My spirit parents, Blake and Gloria. So my guardian angels, I asked them when I was alone after the sessions, I asked them what their names were, and that's the names that came to me, so I'm going with it. So Blake and Gloria are my guardian angels, and they nurtured me and loved me and played with me in the ways that my parents were not able to. So they kind of helped complete that childhood picture in a way that I needed, you know, for my nurturing.
Yeah.
And just to feel valued, you know, it was such a good it was really huge. Like I cried more from that than from the pain that, you know, like I cried out of gratitude for them more than, you know, from the suffering from being abused. And so that was really a really beautiful thing. Anyway, at age 7, my dad started molesting me. At age 8, he started raping me. And I did not know that. The other things that he had told me fit the picture perfectly. You know, when he described what my parents were doing, how they were acting, all these things, everything was very believable. It was like, okay, I totally, you get me, you know, like I felt like we were on the same page. But when he said the sexual abuse stuff, I was just like, whoa, I don't remember that. Like when I remember that, he's like, well, you might have blocked it out. He said a lot of people do. And I was like, okay. And I wanted to believe him because he was so helpful up to that point and everything felt very right. You know, my intuition was telling me he was right on track. But after that session, I was really questioning, like, is this real? Did he make this up?
How did he present that to you? Because it seems like
he didn't go into too much detail. He said he skirts around the details because he doesn't like to look directly at it. Like he doesn't want to see me being raped. And so he tries not to. Like he tries to avoid that because of it being such a sensitive and traumatic experience. So he said he only saw what he needed to see to know that it happened. And it started when I was 7. My dad would act like, hey, we're going to have some father-daughter time, which I never got from my dad. So I was jumping at the opportunity to have some one-on-one time for my dad, but it turned out to be a molesting situation. And then the abuse, the raping started when I was 8. And it was like when he was drunk at night after my mom passed out, those kinds of situations. And so in the weeks that followed, I went through a lot of different emotions.
Did he offer any counseling or consoling after telling you that? Because I could imagine that when somebody presents that to you, that it would change your perspective of your past and your family and everything you've known up to that point.
It definitely did. One of the techniques that he offered was cutting the cord. He said, so when you have a memory that's traumatic and you feel, you know, he said the first thing you need to do when, you know, things come back and it's in your mind and you're feeling it. So the first thing you need to do is allow yourself to feel the emotions fully and just be with them. He said, you know, it's okay to feel that way. And he said, but then after you feel like you've felt it for a while and you're good, he said, then you do imagine in your mind that you're cutting a cord. It could be a ribbon, a rope, whatever you imagine. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, but you break it with something, you know, whether it's scissors or an axe or whatever you imagine is the right thing for that moment. And so every time that trauma comes back and you're feeling it, after you feel it, you cut the cord. And each time you do that, it helps to reduce the emotional tie to that trauma. And that was very helpful, actually. I would use that technique. And
So when
It
you
really helped.
to use that technique, what did that look like? Were you like in a meditative state?
Not
Like how do you?
necessarily. I would be like, oh my God, I feel so lonely and sad and isolated and, like nobody loves me, these real heavy feelings. And so I would cry and I'd allow myself to feel. And then I would picture whatever I would picture. Sometimes it'd be a brick wall and I just had to get, like a wrecking ball and break it, and the more I did it, the less it became. Like by the end, it was just a red flowy ribbon and I'd cut it with some big shears. And so it was like a softer, like less, destructive kind of a feeling.
Because I could imagine at first it was probably anger and frustration, which is why you had images of the wrecking ball, wanting to wreck a wall and whatnot.
Yep, exactly. So it was like the more I did it, the less anger and huge emotions were tied to that memory. And so that was a really beautiful process. But yeah, it was really hard to accept that I was sexually abused. But throughout the next few weeks, I did start noticing memories would come back that indicated that I probably was. So just different hints. And then, actually, a few days after that, he told me that, I actually prayed about it. And I do believe in the power of prayer. And I
like
prayed
in a religious way, or like a more
I'm
of like
not-
putting it into the universe type of.
I'm not religious. I'm more spiritual.
Everybody says that.
Well, I just
What does that mean?
it means I don't succumb to any one religion's belief system. I don't 100% subscribe to one belief system.
Right.
And also religion is, it has led to war and death throughout the ages. And it's, oh my God, I could go, I was Catholic. So then you talk about Catholic priests molesting children and, just, there's so many issues I have with religion. And it's not to say that all Catholics are bad or any religion is bad. And I definitely think some people get great benefits from it, and please let them continue that. But for me, it never felt right. I kept on looking for my perfect religion. I searched and I searched, and I never found one that was just right one for me. So I kind of have like little bits and pieces from different religions that I believe. But I also believe in the earth, and the earth has showed me my belief system, which is, all about nature and just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, but nature is my church. And so if I'm going to go out and pray, it's going to be out in nature, and I feel closest to God there. So I do believe in God. And I also think I use God and the universe interchangeably. So I think the universe and God are one and the same. But I prayed to God and the universe and to my own brain to please let me have one small memory that would help me believe without a doubt that happened to me, that I was abused. If I was abused, I didn't want a false, I wasn't asking for a false belief,
right.
But I wanted, if there was any kind of memory that I could have, and I certainly didn't want to remember all the years of being raped. That would be horrible. Like I don't want to have those memories, but I wanted just one little something that would help me believe it. And I got it actually, like that night or the next night. After praying about it, I had a dream in the morning before I woke up. It was more like a memory than a dream. And I was in the kitchen that I grew up in. I was wiping the counter, and I don't even until that dream, I didn't even remember that kitchen, what it looked like, cause we had moved in junior high to another house. But I was in that kitchen and I remember it very clearly. And then I turned around and my dad was behind me. I don't remember seeing him. And this is the thing with traumatic memories too, is you don't get a picture perfect memory. Nobody ever does. Traumatic memories are bits and pieces. You might feel a texture or hear something, but you don't get all the senses, and you don't get a perfect video, but I knew it was my dad. I felt it was my dad, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew that he was going to rape me, and it was the worst feeling of dread in my life. And I've never felt that until that moment. I mean, I must have felt it, but I didn't. So I don't think I could have conjured that feeling up out of nowhere. And I believe that was a memory. I believe that was a memory that my mind and God gave me as a gift, at my request of wanting some proof.
One thing that happens with you, and you mentioned it, but with traumatic traumatic experiences is that your brain does tend to forget things because it protects you. It's it's a mechanism to protect you and your mind and your brain. And that's something that I had to experience too with going through some of the things that I went through. I remember a lot, but there's been times where like my siblings will mention something like a story and I'm like, I don't remember that. And like, yeah, that happened. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't remember. So it's entirely possible that did happen. And you were so young that you horrified and traumatized from it that you just blocked it out.
Exactly.
Because it's a survival mechanism.
Yep.
Your brain's trying to protect you.
And it did protect me all these years. And I'm very grateful. And I think I found out when the time was right for me to be emotionally mature enough to process those emotions and to know what to do about it. You know, I had Ken, the energy worker that I told you about is Ken Lloyd. If anyone wants to look him up, he's online. And then after that, I did some work with Megan Bergman of Goddess Goals is her business. She did what they call a womb clearing and helped clear out traumatic emotions that had been stored in my womb space, which I didn't know was a thing. But again, when she started talking to me about what she does, I started crying and emotionally, like I knew my intuition was saying, do this. This is right. This is good. Like it was a good kind of cry. And I'm a pretty emotional person these days. Like I've always been emotional, but I didn't used to just let myself cry when I wanted, when my body wanted to. And now I just cry when I need to cry. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a release,
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. It's so important. That's something that a lot of people look at it as a sign of weakness to cry, but it's not.
It's like the opposite.
It's the opposite.
We're most powerful when we're allowed to be vulnerable and show our whole selves, and accepting of those feelings. Like those are part of us and it's okay. We're human. And, like I said, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we got to embrace it all, and, but tears of gratitude are one of the most beautiful things that I've discovered. I feel like that's something I've discovered in the last several years, like being on my own and my path. And I read the book, The Magic, which follows The Secret. It's the second one. And The Secret is all about the law of attraction, but The Magic is all about gratitude and how that gratitude, when we are in a place of feeling gratitude, we're bringing more reasons to be gratitude towards us. We're attracting it and we're attracted to it. And that's the essence of the book, but it's like they do practices every day. You write all these things that you're grateful for and then some other practice. And it was huge in helping me learn to be more grateful in my life. And also that was when I really started crying out of gratitude, and it became a daily practice. I would state all the reasons that I'm grateful. And I usually would say it to God because I believe in God, but you don't have to believe in God to do the gratitude practice. You can just say, hey, Tree, I'm grateful for you, Right. And sometimes I do that too. But like, I like to thank God for all the beauty that's out there in nature and for me and my health and all my organs. And, like you can really go into detail. You can be like, I'm grateful for my blood and all my veins and arteries. And I'm grateful for, there's just so many things. Like you can go on and on and on. If you really allow yourself to open up to gratitude, it's infinite the reasons that you can be grateful. And it really changed my life because it shifted the perspective from, human minds kind of want to notice like things that are wrong. Oh, I see something's wrong over there. Oh, my leg hurts. Oh, this, like you just kind of are programmed to notice when something's wrong. It's not aligned with what you want. And this book just helps to kind of shift that perspective more to like, what's right? Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. And then you realize there's way more right than not,
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
It was really helpful. And so now I do cry out of gratitude often, and just meeting these people that helped me, I was already grateful. Like my intuition told me this is a reason to be grateful. And I just cried. Like it's such a beautiful experience to be that aware, I think, like some part of me is aware. My mind wasn't aware. I was just like, okay, I'm crying. I guess this person's going to help me, like.
I think it's amazing that you were conscious of the fact that there was something in your past that you hadn't worked through, and you were conscious of the fact that I keep finding these relationships that, where people are addicted to whatever, and they have anger problems, or they have these issues, and I seem to be attracted to it. And so you tried actively searching for the reason why,
Mm-hmm.
and you found it.
Yeah.
So,
I think seek and ye shall find. I think that is, I've learned that rule works. You know, if we're really passionate about something, we really want to find the answer.
well, you have to be introspective.
Exactly.
You have to look at yourself. You have to go within, find that why am I attracted to this, and then search it out.
Yes.
It takes work.
It really
it's a
does.
lot of work, and a lot of people don't want to do it.
It really does.
But that brings us back to rising above and overcoming your obstacles. Do you think that if you hadn't, would you, if you could choose now to not have any of that stuff happen to you and live out your life and possibly not have any of the successes that you've had or the experiences in life, would you get rid of all that stuff?
No. And that's something that I've learned is, you know, it's like, yeah, at first it was just like, why me? I feel like this is a horrible thing that happened and it sucks. And, but then now seeing it from the perspective of having learned and grown from it, I recognize that that was in my path for a reason, to help me grow and to help me become stronger and be more compassionate towards others. And to recognize that everyone is suffering on some level or another, and more at different times than others, and that we all need support and guidance and inspiration to help us move forward. And I believe that I'm here to help other people to see that light and to see there's another way. I think that's one of the purposes of my life. You know, I teach yoga, which helps people find peace. I make healthy food for my business, Abundance Cafe, and that helps people, I believe, to feel better in their bodies and also mentally, emotionally, because healthy food is medicine. But then I also think that there's another part where me sharing my story can help people too, you know, and I think that that's really important work. And that's something that I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to do. And I want to, you know, do a little more on like social media, maybe be like an inspirational speaker someday where I can go and talk like on a TED Talk or something. I mean, the idea frightens me, but it also excites me, you know, so I know it's probably something in my future. And I think that we all need inspiration. We all need people to show us the way, you know? So Megan from Goddess Goals, she has really helped me a lot. She's overcome a lot of her own obstacles, and now she's helping women like me who have these issues, and she's empowering me, and she's telling me your voice needs to be heard. And, you know, and she believes in me, you know, and to have other people like that, I feel like we're all here to help each other. And she's helping me in the same way that I hope to help other women someday, or men. I mean, it doesn't have to just be women. Men have been abused too. It's like something like 1 in 4 girls have been abused sexually abused by the time they're 18, and 1 in 6 boys. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that a lot of people are scared to talk about. I mean, it's very uncomfortable, but by hearing your story and hearing how vulnerable you were on the podcast, and hearing, like, I mean, people could see you cry at certain points. It's again, that's a difficult thing to do, but by hearing that gives them power in their stories too. It shows them that they're able to overcome the things that they've gone through also. And who knows what kind of impact, like, somebody hearing that, even if it impacts one person.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, your story impacted me. I was sexually abused when I was a child too. And unfortunately for me, I remember those things.
Yeah.
But that's something that's a part of my story that allows me to help other people.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting to hear, like, your story and how you've gone through these things and how you're wanting to help other people with your story. And because that's something that I wanted to do too, you know, that's why I started the podcast. And then hearing, you know, other people like that Megan lady that you had mentioned, how she's using her story to help other people as well. It's super powerful.
It really is. I mean, we are here for a reason together, like
Yeah.
we could all be on planet Earth by ourselves trying to learn our own stuff, but that's not the case. We're here together because we're meant to grow together and learn from each other and teach each other. And it really is a beautiful process. And Megan, I worked with her again this past week. I did another, I had worked with a couple energy workers who told me that I wasn't grounded. My root chakra was just not really lit up. And I got that because I was feeling really stressed. And when we aren't grounded, we are stressed because the root chakra helps us to be grounded and feel supported and safe. And when we don't feel supported and safe, it's very stressful, right? So I really wanted to work on that chakra. And so Megan helped me with that. And she, it was amazing work. We did some meditating and then we also did some moving because she does movement medicine. And just kind of helped clear out the trauma again, because, she helped me with the womb clearing a couple months ago. But this was like another level, another layer,
Yeah.
And one thing she asked me, she said, resent. She said, are you a martyr? And I said, no, I don't think so. Well, later, of course, I contemplated it and I recognized that subconsciously I am a martyr, or was, because I'm letting it go. But I had been. So like something in my head was a martyr is just basically someone who suffers. And they feel like they need to, like they're giving, like a lot of times it's a religious thing, but it doesn't have to be. It could just be someone who suffers. So I was kind of attracted to suffering or attracting that to me in the men's situation. So it's like, I think about it now after working through the feelings of being abused, sexually abused. I felt like I was in the feelings because the feelings come back when you go and you think about the things that happened to you, even if you don't remember the details, the feelings come back and you remember the feelings. I felt completely isolated, sad, angry, ashamed. I felt super ashamed of myself and my body. And then the other thing is I felt all these feelings. Oh, the other feeling was I felt heartbroken. I realized that my dad broke my heart because I loved him and, would be like excited to see him when he got home from work or like just really wanted some one-on-one time, some love and attention. And I never got it until it was the sexual abuse. And then that was just like, oh, well, that's all I'm good for, And so that was kind of heartbreaking, like to go through that. But I cut the cord and I'm releasing that. But it is so empowering to see where that pattern started because all the guys I've been with broke my heart. None of them treated me right. None of them treated me with like this adoration or this, respect. And, I really wanted I've always just wanted somebody to just be there for me, and just listen to me and just be present, in my life. And I've never felt like I've had that. Every guy has been kind of unavailable to me in some way or another. And so now I recognize that as that pattern is in me because that's how I feel about myself. Whatever, that trauma made me believe, I need to change it because it's not true. That past is in the past. I was always lovable. My dad just didn't have it in him. It was him, not me,
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. Because that was the biggest reason why I was going to get help in the first place. It's like, why do I keep ending up with men who don't treat me right, And so, I just kind of felt like it was an outward thing, but it is very personal and it is very much about me being a martyr, which I hate the label, but to really own that and to recognize that, takes some courage.
Would you say that's like a victim's type of mentality?
Exactly. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've never thought of myself like that because I've always been like, nope, I'm not going to cry about it. I'm going to be tough, and, I always, just the way I was raised, it was like, I wasn't, I don't know. I just didn't feel like that. But when I looked into the when I look deeply into it, I'm like, okay, yep, I do kind of feel sorry for myself in some ways. And I do see the pattern that I've created
It's good to
here.
have those feelings though. It's good to have those thoughts, because then you can work on working yourself out of it.
True.
And then you have a greater appreciation for coming out of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's difficult for a lot of people when they think about the things that happen to them in their life. They become a victim to everything that's happened to them.
Yep.
I see it all the time, and we see it in today's world, all like even more than ever because of social media. But that's something that like I struggled with too when I was younger. I would put myself in this mental area where I'm focusing on like things that maybe were said to me in my past, that like, because like one thing my adopted mom would always tell me is that you're never going to amount to anything, or you're never going to make anything of yourself. And so
Wow.
that was something that always played in my head. That was a fear that I had. Like, I don't want to be somebody that didn't make anything of myself. I want to be a successful person. And so I spent like the younger part of my life trying to prove her wrong. And then when I got into working out, like I said, that was part of my healing journey. And like having an outlet was extremely important. I would put myself into that mindset, almost the victim's mindset. Like, I am going to make something of myself. And like, I'm just taking my aggression out on the things that all my memories, all the things she said or what it did to me. And in a lot of ways, I think it was therapeutic to have those thoughts, but to come out on the other end, like, okay, like I had this moment of vulnerability and weakness in my mind, but I was able to work through it. And in turn, it allowed me to not have this victim's mentality in life.
Yeah.
I didn't walk around with a victim's mentality
Yeah.
of like, oh, this happened to me, so my life is this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can't just lay down and die. Like, we need to fight up against it. But also to recognize that a lot of times what we're fighting against is not even real. Like me, the heartbreak, like my dad didn't love me is my story. I know that's not true. I know he loved me as much as he possibly could, but he was abused and he was neglected and,
Right.
all these things. So he just didn't have it in him to give me what I wanted and needed to thrive. But now I have it in me to give myself those things. I am empowered by recognizing that it is all about me and how I feel about myself. And that's something that I think about more and more, like it isn't about them, any of them, that can mean anybody, your parents, your friends, anyone. They don't really matter. I mean, they do matter, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
their opinions and their thoughts of me don't really matter.
The things that they did to you don't matter.
Exactly. It's in the
what
past.
what matters now is how you're going to react to it and
Yep.
how you manage it. And are you going to hold bitter feelings towards them because of it? Because I mean, it's so easy to want to like be like, well, my parents are just pieces of shit.
Yep.
And they've always treated me bad, or they've traumatized me, they beat me.
Yep.
And I hate them for it.
Yep. And then you're holding anger in your heart. And
But is it-
and it doesn't go anywhere. You have anger held in your heart constantly and it blocks joy.
Yeah.
And so I've definitely recognized that and learned to release it. And I mean, going through just finding out a few months back that I was sexually abused as a child, I had to go through the anger. I had to rage and maybe there'll still be some moments where I feel like I need to let that out. And that's okay. That's healthy.
Yeah.
Like all our
Yeah.
feelings are healthy. But on the other side of that, cut the cord and then have compassion. And that
Forgiveness.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you have compassion,
Yeah.
you have forgiveness, because compassion just means putting yourself in that other person's shoes and seeing they're suffering, and they're still suffering, many people.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad's passed away, but my mom's still alive and I love her and I forgive her. Like I know she didn't do the abuse. I mean, she had a paddle that she would whip us with sometimes, but I could tell it was reluctantly. She did not want to hit us. She's more of a gentle soul, but she knew about my abuse and didn't do anything about it. And that I forgive, because that was her coping mechanism, was to turn a blind eye, put her head in the sand and pretend it's not happening.
Have you ever asked her about any of the sexual abuse?
I have not, and I don't think I can, because I've tried to talk to her about the physical abuse. And she denied that it ever happened. And then when I told her, no, it really did happen, she said, well, that's because you were so horrible to your dad.
Oh, geez.
So she tried to turn the tables, because I think if she admits it, I think then she would have to take some responsibility for allowing it to happen.
Right.
So that was her response to the physical abuse, like, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, when I was seeing a therapist about it. And so I don't have it in me to try to confront her about it, because I feel like she might attack me and make me feel
victimized.
Yeah. And I don't think it's necessary for me to talk to her about it. I've written her a couple letters and burned them, just to try to get it off my chest. And I am really working towards healing that relationship, even though she may not hear those words from me, she senses it. Yeah. She senses it. And her and I have been connecting a little more recently. We've never been real close. We don't call each other on the phone like a lot of people do. But she's been reaching out more. She's been sending me little gifts. I've been sending her things. I feel like energetically that relationship is healing. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I can't blame her. I know she was afraid of my dad. We all were, and I know the way she was raised is women are basically like they're basically like possessions of the men. Yeah. And I felt kind of like a possession growing up. And so that's how she feels about herself and her own personal power. And that's kind of sad, but I think she's grown too throughout her life. And I like to think she's stronger and happier now than she was. And
that's one thing that, we can wrap this up here soon, but sure. That's one thing that by doing this podcast, I've had a couple episodes where I talk, like in the beginning, I shared my story of overcoming and my abuse. And then a couple episodes after that, I had my dad on, my adopted dad, and he talked about some of the things that he went through, and he also talked about a lot of the things that happened while I was in his house, and
wow.
And so we talk a lot about like the abuse again, and with him, and then just recently I had my adopted brother on, his son. He was on the podcast, and we were just kind of laughing, joking, but we were talking about our trauma that we had gone through, and some of the comments were interesting because like one person was like, I like you guys, but I don't understand how you guys can just joke about this. This makes me angry. And, to hear some of the things that we had gone through.
Yep.
And I just always found that interesting because for one, I'm not the kind of person that will typically hold things against people. I try to like just let it go and then move on and try to find light in the whole situation.
Yeah.
And I guess that's probably like my like coping mechanism.
Yep.
But it's interesting to hear like other people say that because that's the kind of world we live in where people, if somebody does you wrong, then they disown you for the rest of time.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that you highlighted your relationship with your mom and how you didn't just disown her and you're not like, fuck her and your relationship with her. You are actively trying to, make it better, regardless of the fact that she allowed all this stuff to happen to you.
Yeah.
And
I definitely, I think that's a huge part of healing is allowing yourself to forgive and have compassion for others, including the people who harmed you or knew about you being harmed and did nothing about it. And I also think along the lines of what you were just saying, I think that is actually important for us to have our trauma be triggered and to recognize that we need to do something about it. And so like that guy that got angry, that's a good thing. I think that's a blessing that he was angry because that shows him that he has unresolved feelings inside of him that he needs to address. And whether he wants to journal about it or get a therapist or work out or, like whatever mechanism he
find
uses.
Find a way to get through it.
Find a way to get through it because it doesn't go away. And I think that would be like my biggest message I would want to give to the viewers is your trauma doesn't ever just go away if you do nothing about it. I was in my young 20s. I remember thinking life is perfect, life is great. And sometimes I didn't feel like it was, but I swept it under the rug. I swept it under the rug until when I was 28, the rug came flying out from under me and I felt miserable. I'm like, I'm not happy with my marriage. I'm not happy with my life. What's wrong with me? And I'm like, I thought everything was perfect because I was pretending it was, but I had this trauma that was affecting me every day that I didn't even recognize, so when you get a trigger, if something triggers you, instead of avoiding it like most people want to do, look right at it and be like, why does that bother me? Just like with that sexual abuse, like when I saw other girls being sexually abused, it bothered me so much. Like I was just like, whoa, this hits home. Like, I don't know why, but I'm triggered right now. And now I know why. And now I can move through that and release it, and move on and hopefully help other people to move on, because it is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't just say, okay, I'm done with that. It's over. No, feelings are going to keep coming back and you need to keep releasing them and cutting the cord and journaling about it and accepting, like don't just wish it all away because it doesn't just go away instantly. But when you allow yourself the time to process it. And, when I was abused, I was a kid. Same with you. Like we weren't mature enough to really understand those feelings or to fully process them, you know? And so it was just like this miserable, lonely place where nobody was nurturing us or giving us what we needed emotionally. In my family, like we didn't talk about emotions, like that was pretty typical back then. And I think we've come a long way. I've talked to my kids about emotions and they're good at expressing their feelings. And I love that. I love that how the world is changing to be more sensitive. But yeah, I think that it's really important to just be accepting of all our feelings and to recognize that just because we're angry or sad does not mean we should run away from it, go drink or, do what you have to do to escape it. It
lean
means
into it.
Lean into it. And
go to that dark place.
Mm-hmm.
Your
shadow.
It's scary to go to that dark place, but it's extremely important to find who you are as a person and why you're having those feelings and how you can work through them.
Exactly.
Yeah. You need to go to the dark place.
You do. Don't dwell in it too long. I definitely don't recommend that.
No.
But be there, feel it, and then let yourself release those feelings once you recognize that you don't need to feel that way anymore. I'm not a victim anymore. Nobody's hurting me. I'm safe. I'm, reminding yourself of these things are important.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to get grounded like I am, I'm safe, I'm secure, I'm protected, and I am my own protector. And that's something that I think is really important too, is to recognize that I am in control of screening the men that enter my life. If I'm going to date someone, which I'm not dating anyone right now, just going through all this is enough, but I am learning that I can trust men again. Like I am learning that I've attracted the men that I have for reasons. They've been teaching me. But that ultimately I will find someone who treats me with gentle kindness and respect and nurturing and all the things I want, because that's what I'm putting into myself now, really focusing on nurturing myself and loving myself the way that I want to be loved, and,
you definitely get what you put in.
Yeah.
And, you get what you put into your own life.
Yeah, you do. And then you attract it from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a journey. It's interesting because like as a child, I was super angry. I mean, most people probably would not peg me that because I'm mostly just happy nowadays. But like, I was angry and I would just beat the crap out of my brothers or at boys at school. Boys were my target, like they would tease me, if a boy would call me a name or whatever, I'd kick him, I'd pull his hair, like whatever. Like I had so much rage that just needed to come out. And it's like, it's just interesting to see how far I've come from that little girl who was just tormented and angry and hurt all the time to, somebody who's really gone through this full spectrum of growth to be way more balanced and happy and centered and just feeling and also just now like I feel like I really am attracting like good people into my life now that I've really worked on myself so much in the last few years. Like I've worked on self-love and self-acceptance, and I'm finding more people that love me and accept me, just entering my life magically, I got new friends, I got new people I'm working with or whatever. Everyone, it is interesting how I am reflecting that back, you know, my insides back out into the world with the people I meet and the things I'm doing. And
Yeah.
it's interesting.
That is very interesting. And I mean, they say all the time, like, you know, you will attract. It's kind of the law of attraction.
It is. Exactly.
You attract who you attract what you put into the world. And
yeah.
I think that's awesome. That's incredible that you're able to do that.
Yep. And I mean, it's an ongoing journey. It's not like I'm done, but I feel like I've come so far. There's some times where I think, okay, I think I'm done now.
You're never done.
I'm never going to be done. I'm never going to be done. I never want to be done. I want to keep growing. I want to live till I'm 120 and I want to keep growing my whole life and I want to keep learning my whole life. You know, I'd love to learn an instrument when I'm 90. Like
that's something that isn't really isn't really talked about, because like back in like probably your parents' generation and my parents' generation, like you got a good job and then you just kind of settled into life and you just coasted. And then the whole idea of like getting a retirement and you retire and you could just sit around the house and do nothing. It's like, it's an ambition killer because you don't strive to be better whatsoever. You just go to your job that you hate every single day. You shut up, do your job, come home and eat dinner and go to sleep. Yeah. Watch TV or whatever. Yep. And a lot of people don't focus on themselves. They don't focus on learning something new or practicing or working out or just reading or like doing things that would make them a better person every single day. Yeah. Or like playing, exploring, you know, doing things that nurture our inner child. Like a lot of adults don't think about those things, but they're so important. Painting, you know, like I think, it's all good stuff. Keeping life interesting, keeping alive, you know, like what does it mean to be alive? For me, it's action, you know. And you know, some kind of progress, you know, so you don't feel alive unless you have some kind of progress. If you feel stagnant, you're feeling stuck. You're feeling like something's not right, you know, and it's true. Yeah. If you're feeling that way, it's true because something's not right because you should be moving. Right. You know, we all should continue to grow. And it's like someone had done the analogy of like a plant. Like if a plant's not growing, it's dying. And that's basically with us. If we're not growing, we're dying. And I was like, whoa, that's intense, but true. I think it's kind of true. That is true. Yeah. Yeah. And somewhere around 40, 50 years old for a lot of people is when people start slowly dying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That midlife crisis time. When people are like, what's my purpose? You know? Yeah. I feel like a lot of people are searching for their purpose earlier on in life these days, which I think is beautiful. I think so. And I think it's great. And I don't think we necessarily have to have just one purpose, but I think it's important for people to feel like there is a purpose, you know, and to recognize that they are contributing to the world to make it a better place. Well, I think a lot of people find purpose in like religion. And that was something that was kind of big in the past. And it's something that's not so big anymore. So now it's causing a lot of people to look within for their purpose. I mean, if you look, there's a lot more like yoga studios and more spiritual centers, and people are focusing more on those type of things now because they don't have a purpose and they need to find their purpose. And then through finding their purpose, they're finding their healing journey, and it's causing them to be better people. And it's progress. It is in society. It's interesting to watch. It is. It's a beautiful thing. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up? Don't think so. If you could put one message out there for maybe somebody who's gone through some of the same things you've gone through, or even they're possibly going through something that you've gone through, or something that is traumatic in their life at this moment in this period of time, what would you say to them? I would say you're not alone. There are people out there to help you, and there's a lot of people who have gone through similar situations. And so, you know, a lot of times abuse can make us feel alone because during that time period, we couldn't tell anyone and we felt isolated in our abuse. But the reality is now we are not alone, and there are people that can support us, and we just have to reach out, you know, find a good therapist, find a good friend who understands, or I'm sure there's chat lines and different, you know, things online that you can find, chat rooms or whatever. But I would definitely, and
I definitely would say don't underestimate the power of energetic healers like Ken Lloyd and Megan from Goddess Goals, and my friend Cindy, I forgot her last name, Freeman. Cindy Freeman also did some energy work with me. All three of these people have abilities that at first you might not even believe, but it's real, and they are really helpful in situations like this. But if you're not into that, therapy, there's a million different types of therapies out there that are all really beneficial. But I would just say, do yourself a favor and let other people help you, because it's hard to do anything alone. Like I said, we're not here alone on this planet, and there's a reason. We're here with others because we're meant to support each other and learn from each other. So, but I also would say there's light at the end of the tunnel. There was a time where I was miserable and I didn't feel like it was ever going to be easy. It was the life is hard kind of a scenario in my head. And as long as you keep telling yourself life is hard, life will continue to be hard. And it can feel like you can't get out. But when you recognize that there is help and there is transformation, then you can see there's light at the end of the tunnel, and life doesn't have to be hard.
I love it. It's beautiful. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah,
this was our second time doing it,
Yep.
but I actually think it was better this time.
Yeah, I think so too.
It was a little bit, I guess, easier to follow. You seemed more comfortable, which I love. I don't like seeing people be nervous, and I'm like, we're just talking.
Yeah, I feel like I worked through some of the nerves after that last time, and I feel more grounded, and I felt more ready, I think, today. So
yeah, you seemed like it. You were on fire.
Thank you.
I love the way you shared your story. It was empowering, and I think it will help a lot of people. So
thank you. I hope so.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you.